Hey there everyone, welcome to another Unity tutorial. In the previous lesson, we went over how the Unity editor works and kind of rearranged it a little bit. We played around with scenes to show how scenes are treated in Unity, and we were able to create our own game object. I'm in the sample scene now where we created our cube. The cube is not very important, so I'm going to delete that, and I'm also going to delete the other scene that we had created. So our project is basically back to how it started before we did the previous lesson. So if you've just opened Unity with a new one, if you missed the last lesson for any reason, we're basically in the exact same spot right now. So I'm going into the Project tab. I'm going to click on Assets to get to the main Assets folder of Unity. And I'm going to right-click in here and create a new folder called Scripts. And we're going to create our first script. So in the sample scene, I'm just going to create, this time I'll create a sphere. And let's just move that to the origin of the scene. We're going to just put 0, 0, 0 for its position. And we're going to add a component for the first time to one of our game objects. So we have quite a few that come from the sphere by default. It needs to render, so it needs its mesh renderer, as well as it comes with a collider by default. So if there was collision to happen in the scene, this would have a method to handle it. So we're going to keep all those for now. They're not important to what we're doing, but we're going to add our own. So when we add this component, there's a ton of things you can add, like for example, we have the mesh renderer that we have up here. So you can search and find those and add them. But if you want to add your own script, you can add it directly here by typing a new name, like let's just call it sphere script. And then I could press new script, and I could create it and add it right now. However, there's another way that you can add these scripts. So I'm going to go into the scripts folder, right-click in here, and create a new C# script. This one will be called sphere script. And I'll press enter so that it creates it. It's going to have this wheel spinning down here for a moment, which means that Unity is compiling. It's making sure that the code is valid. That way, if you press play, it won't have build errors. It won't have compile errors. So now that we have the sphere script in here, and we have selected the sphere in our hierarchy, we can either search for it. So as you can see, it now appears right here, or we can drag it from the project right here. And now we have the sphere script. It's just this tiny little component right here. We've added a script now, but it's basically empty. It's the default script, so we could do a little bit more. If we double click it, it will open our IDE of choice. By default, since Unity 2018, it's Visual Studio, and if you watched some of the previous lessons, you would know Visual Studio Community is free, and so that's what I've decided to use for these tutorials. All right, so it's going to take just a little bit to open up. It looks like Visual Studio itself is launched, so let me go back into Unity and double click on the script again, and there we go. Now we have the script itself opened. I've zoomed in by holding Control and zooming in on the mouse wheel. You don't have to do that, of course. And I'll just break down the script really quickly. You have the name of the script, and it inherits the monobehavior class. What that means is it is a script that you can drag onto the object. As we saw in Unity, we can drag our script onto the object. It becomes a component. If you don't have the monobehavior keyword here, if you don't inherit from monobehavior in some way, you can't drag the script onto your object. This comes by default. It's no problem. All of this is every time you do create a new C# script, it'll generate this for you. All we want to do is make our sphere do something interesting. So there's a couple things we can do. The first thing I'm going to do is use the start function that was provided when we generated the script, and I'm going to get our sphere's scale to just increase a little bit. Just immediately when we start, it's just instantly going to be a different size. So if you remember, the scale is held in the transform component. So I can just type transform, and then I need our scale. So if I type scale, you can see there's no scale variable, but we have local scale. That's good enough. This variable is exactly what you see in the inspector in Unity. So if we hover over local scale, you can see it's a vector 3. A vector 3 is 3 kind of like coordinate points put together. So we want to set this equal to a new vector 3, and let's make it a little bit uneven. Let's do 5 for the x value, let's do 3 for the y value, and 10 for the z value. And then of course, semicolon at the end of every line. We'll save the script. You can watch the asterisk disappear when I save. And we're going to Alt-Tab back into Unity. So in Unity, it takes a second to compile. Since our project's new, it's really fast. It's already done. And you can see the script itself hasn't changed at all, but when we press play, the sphere will scale to this weird size. So you can see its scale is 5, 3, 10, just like in the script. And because this was done in play mode, when we exit play mode, it will revert back to the size here. If in the scene we changed this to be 100 for its x scale and pressed play, it would scale to 5, 3, 10, and then when we exit play mode, it would revert back to the 100 that we put in. Obviously that's a bit ridiculous, but that's generally the flow of how this works. Now let's say we wanted something with a little bit more motion on it. We would not want to use the start function. Instead, we can use update. As you can see, update is called once per frame. That means it happens approximately 60 times a second. This is another function that Unity and C# just supports by default. The monobehavior class lets us do a lot of things by default without needing to we don't need to invent a frame rate. Unity already has that for us. So by this function, we can kind of use it. So let's take this line of code. I'm going to highlight it and I'm going to cut it. I'm going to paste it. So we're going to just ignore start for now. We can even delete it. Nothing wrong will happen if we delete it. And we're going to get rid of this part here. So we still want transform local scale. And all we're going to do is we're going to multiply it. So that's the asterisk. And if you want to multiply it by a number, immediately you do times equals. So we're going to just make it get a little bit bigger every frame. Even this is probably a little extreme. Let's go real small. So it's just going to get a tiny bit bigger every frame. 1.01 f basically means it's a float value. And a float is just a number with a decimal, basically. That's all you need to know about floats. So if we do this, every frame it's going to try to scale the sphere up a little bit while we're in play mode. So as you can see, it's going up and it's scaling like crazy. And there you go. That's how you use the update loop. Again, start only happens once, right when you press play or when a scene is loaded, but update will happen every frame. So this will just continuously happen. So you can kind of start to picture how you might want to program movement or something like that. The last thing that I want to show for this video, since this is our first script, it's super basic stuff. Hopefully it's been pretty easy to follow along so far, is just make it so this won't happen unless we press something on the keyboard. So first we're going to make this go a little bit bigger. We're going to make it multiply by 2, and I'm going to write it the other way this time. So I'm going to say transform local scale is equal to transform.localScale times 2. You don't need the 0.0f, you could just use 2, but I prefer to just write out all my numbers as floats. Now this will happen every frame right now, but we can check to see if a condition is met, and this condition will be if we are pressing the spacebar. So if we have the input get key down key code space, then we will do this. So if you see how this code's written here, we have a condition here, which is the if statement, and it needs to evaluate input, which is something Unity can kind of look for us. That's another thing that Unity provides is the input class. We can check if the key is down, which is once every time it's pressed. And we're looking for key code.space, so the space bar. You can see there's a lot of different things here, like you could just do A, you could do like 5, which is alpha 5. You can do like the equals sign, which is equals. We're, of course, just sticking to space. If this happens, then we will multiply our scale by 2. So let's switch back into Unity. And I'm going to press play once it's finished compiling. And I'm going to press and hold space. As you can see, it's gone up once. I've now let go of space. And every time I press it now, it will multiply its scale by 2. If you wanted it to go up whenever you were holding space, you could get rid of this part where it says down, and this would check that it's held at all. So the first frame it gets pressed, as well as every frame after that that it's being held, this will be true, and it will call this part of the code. So if we leave it like this, you'll see it's going to get very large very, very quickly. So let's give that a shot. I'm going to press it pretty fast, but as you can see, even though I pressed it pretty quick, it's still got quite a few frames of multiplying its scale by 2. And if I hold it, it just explodes in size. But yeah, that's basically everything that I wanted to show for this video. Again, it's still pretty basic stuff, but it's the really important stuff. And this is the kind of thing that you're going to see in every tutorial, basically from now on. Creating scripts, adding components to your game objects, and then actually writing some code into your scripts is extremely important stuff. And this is the most beginner level version of it right now, but in the coming lessons, we'll be looking to do some more interesting things with input and movement. Maybe having a character move around a little bit, or at the very least, having an object move around in the scene, and I'll show you how to switch scenes as well. So look forward to that. That should be coming pretty soon.